The day that would come to be known as the Great Unveiling didn't start great for you. "Dick, wake up! Everyone's naked!" What could he possibly be talking about, you thought, as you opened your eyes to find you were staring right at your dad's, fatherhood. You looked down under the covers and sure enough, your pajamas were gone, naked as the day you were born. You looked back at your dad. Wait a minute, weren't you supposed to share 50% of the same DNA? This was unfair. "Everyone," your dad keeps saying as he walks in circles, "even old Miss Benowitz from next door." A mix of panic and disgust on his face. At that moment, your naive brain had absolutely no idea of the problems you and 8.2 billion others were about to face. Life would never be the same, and all you could think about was Betty from biology class. You went downstairs to find your sister and mom sitting in the living room holding cushions over their chests, like makeshift fig leaves. But no matter how hard they tried, it didn't work. You could still see their nakedness when anything touched their skin. On the TV, they were talking about the possibility of a celestial experiment or even some kind of fashion rapture. Maybe God had a dark sense of humor. Your wardrobe was empty when you looked inside, except for that stack of Hustler magazines you'd hidden under your jeans. But you were more concerned about your brand new Nike Air Force Ones that were now in the great wardrobe in the sky. It was strange, but after a couple hours, your family seemed to get used to being naked, at least with each other. "Come on, darling, it's not like I haven't seen it before," your mom joked. She was already seeming at ease with her exposed, semi-retired, middle-aged body. Everyone just stopped looking after a while, but none of you dared to go outside. You were not quite ready for naked strangers. You spent all day glued to the news watching the newscasters trying to explain what had happened to the world while attempting to ignore the fact that their boobs were the main attraction. By the third day, all of you were still at home parked in front of the TV. The US government was calling it the Great Unveiling. In India, where hectic streets and busy cities were a sea of bobbing breasts and bouncing balls, they were calling it the time of natural being. Little did they know what was coming. Governments had to get people back to work. They informed their citizens that they had to do whatever jobs that they were ordered to do for the greater good of the country. By the fifth day, all over the world, houses were losing electricity, families' food stocks ran dry, and their water stopped flowing. Your mom, an English teacher, could work online, but it was only a matter of time until she'd be called into the school. She was dreading the first time she'd meet her students, but as the days passed, the online classes with her naked 11th graders became less and less awkward. As for your dad, a firefighter, no one knew what to do about that. All over the world, fires raged in houses, and putting them out was problematic. Hospitals remained open, but now there was a heightened risk of infections. Weirdly, even though there were fewer cops in the streets, barely anyone committed crimes. Even hardcore thieves and drug dealers were coy about exposing their Johnsons in public. Looking out the window, it seemed like some people had already embraced the whole naked thing. The TV kept talking about body positivity, but through the binoculars all you saw were chiseled abs and flawless bodies. Ripped dudes and slim women strolled around like it was some sort of topless fitness expo, casually hunting for open shops or just showing off. So that's how it all started. Shame and embarrassment with your own family didn't last long at all. By day 10, you barely even registered you were naked when in the house. Politicians rambled about liberation and a new equality, like it was some sort of evolutionary throwback. Sure, humans had been naked before 100,000 years ago, but this time, there were a whole load of unexpected problems. The food ran out in your house by day 12, and anyway, you were all getting bored of mac and cheese. It was decided that you'd be the first to go outside. "What, I'm expendable? Or just ugly?" you asked. No one replied as their eyes looked up at the ceiling. You opened the front door and reluctantly stepped out, and then it hit you. The wind blowing against your junk. It kind of felt liberating, but 5 minutes later, it was just cold. Awesome, you thought as your package shrunk and shriveled. None of this felt the least bit sexy. On TV, people in northern Russia, Canada, and Alaska were already freezing to death, and it was only spring. Winter was going to be brutal. Embarrassment took a backseat to survival. First stop, buying groceries. There was a grocery store about 20 minutes walk away. No way were you getting on a bus, aka Perv Central. As one trundled by, he waved at the two passengers, feeling a weird sense of community spirit. A naked woman flipped you off while covering her chest with her free hand. "We're all in this together, eh?" you mumbled sarcastically. One of the downsides of being commando 24/7 was a lack of pockets. You were thinking about that when a car screeched to a halt behind you, something you'd hear a lot in the early days of nakedness. Most of it was guys distracted by the roadside boob show. Nakedness was still a novelty. Soon it'd be old news, but for now, every street was Creep Street. As you entered the supermarket, some people already looked quite at ease with their nakedness, yet others like you were obviously new to the outdoor exposure. "Hey, Dick," you heard from behind you. You knew that voice. You'd had dreams about that voice. Gina Pearson, the second hottest girl in high school after Biology Betty. Your face burned red as you turned around. "Weird, eh?" she said, laughing but still nervous. She was obviously better at this nakedness thing than you. "I'm kinda getting used to it," she admitted, her eyes doing a milliseconds-long reconnaissance of your undercarriage. "It's my first time out of the house," you stuttered. So she grabbed your arm as if to say, "Come with me, it'll be all right." Her confidence and the fact that people were just getting on with things made things feel more normal. Sure, during that first shopping trip you checked a lot of people out. Maybe you stared too long at flabby folds or pondered on the trouser snake versus foot size theory, but after an hour, the nakedness felt normal. What wasn't normal? Walking barefoot. The news showed hospitals packed with people nursing busted feet, bruised penises, and sunburned boobs. You experienced your first sausage injury that day, one of many before you became skilled at protecting yourself. A woman pushed past you on the cereal aisle, the scuffed and sharp mesh of her basket grazing your meat and two veg. "Ouch!" you screamed. "Be careful with that thing." You looked up. It was Miss Bagstock, your old head mistress, rocking a full 70s all natural vibe. "Hey, Miss Bagstock," you mumbled weakly. She smirked and said, "Dick," with the perfect amount of irony, before grabbing a box of Lucky Charms. People were already applying new forms of social etiquette. Personal space was key. People tried to keep at least a foot or two apart, like everyone was contagious. Okay, it made you feel like you had leprosy, but it was better than accidentally brushing up against someone's naked body. People didn't even blink an eye when the government installed CCTV on every street. Large stickers said, "We are watching." Each camera came with an automated facial recognition technology. They even had automated penis recognition, or APR. Public erections weren't illegal, but they did get you flagged and put on the HIP watch list. HIP stood for hard in public. Clothing companies went under, leaving malls and high streets eerily empty. It also made people feel like a collective, which wasn't really a good thing. Billionaire fashion moguls shifted gears. Hair became the new status symbol. The rich blew insane amounts on hairstyles, desperate to stand out. Everyone else started dyeing their hair. You shaved all yours off, saving yourself a ton of money. "Bald is beautiful," you kept telling your friends. Body design took off, piercings, branding, and tattoos everywhere. Full body ink became the go-to for covering up nakedness, a trend that people would seriously regret. You've never been a fan of the gym, but now all that money you were saving from not buying clothes went to sculpting your body. It was amazing how many people were getting fit, losing that body fat. But in those first few months, insecurities over body shapes meant great swaths of the public wouldn't leave the house. People starved rather than go outside. This would change in time. Everything would change. The porn industry took a huge hit. Once worth $97 billion, now it was a total flop because naked bodies were everywhere. Strippers were out of work by the millions, marching with signs that read, "We did this first, don't forget us." With all this nakedness, sex started to feel purely like procreation, like you were just an animal. Well, you were, but you never felt like one before. In just a few months, a random pair of boobs barely even registered anymore. "Winter is coming," said the news, like a naked Jon Snow gazing out over the wall. All the money saved on not buying clothes or having to wash them was being spent on heating. As fall arrived and the leaves on the trees turned orange, people stayed indoors as often as possible. Streaming platforms made tons of money, but only from old content. You watched all of Breaking Bad on Netflix twice in 1 month, only to have it ruined when you saw Bryan Cranston in an interview completely naked. The TV and film industry tried to stay in business. It couldn't afford to close down completely. Millions of people globally relied on these industries for work, and many more millions relied on them for entertainment. The problem was, when those first new all-naked TV shows came out, you couldn't take the characters seriously. Chicago Fire and Chicago Med started looking like comedies. Special agents and serial killers in cop shows just didn't feel real when they were naked. Law and Order, The Equalizer, you name it, audiences couldn't suspend disbelief. Family shows, totally out of the question, at least in the early days. Nakedness had wrecked visual storytelling, so studios started making adult animation dramas. Clothes remained on in those first few animated films, but even that didn't last long. Then there were sports. NFL Sunday Night Football was never the same again. The shoeless, naked players were too timid as their schlongs swung loose on the field. Basketball courts were a slam dunk for genital injuries. UFC was like witnessing live-action sexual misconduct. Cristiano Ronaldo finally retired. His signature headers just didn't work with a flapping wang. And as the weather grew colder, being outside became an impossibility. Swimming got popular, as did darts and snooker. New board games were invented. Twister was banished. The video game industry made bank. But all this hiding inside wasn't good for mental health. You really missed the great outdoors, and you'd always hated the great outdoors. You missed camping, but you've never even been camping. Winters eventually got easier, but the crushing isolation of indoor life never went away. Even with endless entertainment, lamps that mimicked sunlight, and tunnels to other people's houses, the loneliness stayed. Even with Joan, your new AI girlfriend, in your virtual augmented reality, nothing could replace nature. Humans needed to be among one another out in the open. As technology companies announced record revenue, people just got sadder. Summers felt like a distant dream. One of the strangest things is that young people started marrying sooner. You and Betty got hitched in 2031 after securing an enticing government marriage loan. The late 20th century trend of fewer kids flipped. People stopped chasing hookups and started craving families instead. All these new kids around started to grow up not feeling embarrassed about their bodies or about making love. It was all just a part of nature. Sure, people still fell in love, but sex was totally demystified, untabooed. It was all about building a better global society. Your father retired with burn scars all over his body. In 2027, he had a penectomy after being injured getting Miss Benowitz's cat out of a tree. People had to adapt. Open flames were almost a thing of the past, slashing the 70 million fire injuries per year before the Great Unveiling. Sex crimes almost vanished. Murders were way down. People became much cleaner. But it couldn't stop the spread of viruses. You remember those first few years when you so often saw melted brown ice cream on bus seats. That wasn't ice cream. It was never ice cream. Colonoscopy bag sales skyrocketed, with people strapping poop bags over their shoulders. Embarrassing at first, but like everything else, carrying around a bag of fresh poop became just another part of life. These were the days when the movie theater chains always smelled like urine. This wasn't hygiene anarchy, it was leakage. Soon everything turned to plastic and got washed on repeat. Kids these days don't remember what it was like wearing clothes. They laugh when you tell them, "When I was a lad, we had to work outside in the winter. We didn't even have robots." They look at movies and photographs and laugh at how old-fashioned you were. This new generation is better at staying indoors than you. If only they knew how great it felt to walk in nature whenever you wanted. They think it's weird that you were once ashamed about your nudity. To be honest, you're also forgetting what those first days of shame felt like. But if you had the chance to go back to a world of clothes, you'd jump at it. Modern kids, they just don't get it. You miss when penises and vaginas weren't just body parts. You miss winter outdoors. You miss freedom. Who could have ever imagined all this would happen just because everyone went naked? Now you really need to watch The End of Civilization Century by Century, or have a look at why it would suck to live through the end of the universe.